All right, and welcome to Hannity. In 3 hours, less than 3 hours, it is election night. It is election day in America. But breaking moments ago, as we were just discussing, Joe Rogan has now officially endorsed Donald J. Trump for president. We'll have more on this in a moment. It's officially election eve, just a few hours short. Polls will be open, and anyone who didn't already vote, well, they'll have one last day to cast their ballot, let their voice be heard. It is expected 80+ million Americans will vote tomorrow. That means this election is not decided. Mark my words, it will be decided now by what we call turnout. Now, I've been saying to people, especially if you live in Georgia, North Carolina, if you live in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, if you live in Michigan, if you live in Arizona, Nevada, treat your vote like it will be the deciding vote this election. If you look at the polls and for what they mean, whether you trust them or you don't trust them, this race has razor-thin margins in these key swing states. Your vote will absolutely matter, and you couldn't have two more distinct visions for the future of the country. In these swing states alone, your vote is going to be particularly important. Here's where we start tonight. According to my sources, there is cautious optimism at the Trump campaign. Don't take that to the bank. Assume your vote's the deciding vote. As of tonight, Kamala Harris has a little bit of a math problem in key battleground states because early vote turnout was way down for Democrats, especially in deep blue urban areas. Meanwhile, early vote turnout was way up for Republicans with a record participation in rural areas. But all of this will mean absolutely nothing without a big day tomorrow. What I would say is a sense of urgency is critical. This is a tipping point. I would even call it an inflection point for the country. There is so much at stake. And if you care about your children, your grandchildren, you've got to care about the direction of the country. There's no doubt a Kamala Harris presidency, in my mind, would be a disaster. Now, despite all the vague answers, and I love my favorite answer is, Kamala, what do you think of the economy? I was born in the middle class. Kamala, what do you think of the immigration problem? Did you know that I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood? Besides all of that, the uncomfortable, obnoxious giggling, the lack of vetting from the media, which I think is a huge story as it relates to the entire election cycle, there is no mystery about what Kamala Harris truly believes. This is the single most radical far-left candidate to ever run as a major party candidate. But don't take my words for it. In spite of the media hiding all of this from you, before you vote, let's do what the state-run media mob has purposely failed to do. Let's just play Kamala, her real views, in her own words, that she has been unwilling to express, and she's been ducking and dodging and hiding and bobbing and weaving. Let's start with the lifeblood of the world economy. It's called energy. Take a look.
Will you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking your first day in office, adding the United States to the list of countries who have banned this devastating practice?
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yeah.
So would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes. And I've, again, worked on that.
Now, of course, she wants to win Pennsylvania, so she's taken a different position. Which Kamala do you believe? You think that person will be eager to sign off on new leases for fracking? She's been against offshore drilling. She has long wanted to destroy the fossil fuel industry in America. She's the one that supported electric vehicle mandates in the country, not choice, mandates. Meanwhile, in his first term, Donald Trump unleashed American energy. We became energy independent for the first time in 75 years. Remember what you were paying? The price at the pump was way down. Do you like paying $1.50 more a gallon for gasoline now? America was a net exporter of energy. At the same time, Kamala co-sponsored the Capitol is killing $93 trillion Green New Deal, proudly declared that she would eliminate the filibuster to ram it through Congress. Take a look, her in her own words.
Here's my point. If they fail to act as President of the United States, I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal.
Why is she not running on what she really believes? She co-sponsored that bill with Bernie Sanders in the U.S. Senate. Let's be clear. That Green New Deal would implement full-fledged socialism, statism, Marxism, pick the word of your choice into the U.S. It would cost a whopping $93 trillion, allow the government to control the means of production in several major industries, and spell the end of capitalism and the end of the American dream. And by the way, capitalism, the greatest wealth creation system ever designed by mankind. But Kamala thinks it's a great idea. So great that she wrote the bill in the Senate. Now, Kamala's track record on the economy is absolutely awful. Take a look.
Fighting inflation is one of our administration's top economic priorities.
Was it wrong to consider inflation transitory? I mean, these price spikes seem like they're going to be with us for a while.
We have to address the fact that we got to deal with the fact that folks are paying for gas, paying for groceries, and need solutions to it.
She's promoting policies like saying that every single carbon emission in the country, every car, should be eliminated within the next 11 years, everything from a 70 to 80% tax rate. Do you agree that she could possibly, in this ideology of the socialist left, could splinter your party?
No. You know, I think that she is challenging the status quo. I think that's fantastic.
We've got to increase the corporate tax rate. We also have to increase taxes for the top 1%. And that part of that is going to be about repealing that tax bill that they just passed. And also looking at estate taxes are going to have to go up.
By the way, now she's saying on day one she's going to deal with inflation and that she's going to fix the border that she's been telling us for 3+ years is secure. Wasn't day one January 20th, 2021? And talking about a 70 to 80% tax rate, okay, on top of a tax on unrealized capital gains, a capital gains hike in and of itself, of course she has vowed to let the Trump tax cuts expire. That means all of you will pay higher taxes. Remember, Trump lowered taxes for all Americans with those tax cuts, but who benefited? The middle class and minorities in America. Meanwhile, Kamala thinks Bidenomics was a great success. She wouldn't change a thing. Take a look.
All that, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else, that is called Bidenomics. That is called Bidenomics, and we are very proud of Bidenomics. And as today's jobs numbers make clear, Bidenomics is working.
You probably forget, but under Donald Trump, inflation was non-existent. Under Biden and Harris, prices have gone up more than 20+% on average, but Kamala just doesn't seem to notice the record-setting inflation only until recently when she became the presumptive nominee. This is coming from the same Kamala Harris who told us the border's secure. You might not remember this.
Would you call the border secure?
I think that there is no question that we have to do what the president and I asked Congress to do. Is the first request we made. Pass a bill to create a pathway to citizenship. The border is secure.
You're confident this border is secure?
We have a secure border in that is a priority for any nation, including ours and our administration.
Now, before Kamala, under Donald Trump, the border was secure, record low crossings, but then came this border czar Kamala Harris and a flood of unvetted Harris-Biden illegal immigrants, nearly 12.5 million of them. She knew the border wasn't secure. She knew millions of these illegal immigrants were unvetted, pouring into our country each and every year. That included murderers, rapists, known terrorists. We don't know where they are, but they're in the country. We're coming in record numbers from over 180 countries, including Iran, including Syria, including Afghanistan, including Egypt and Venezuela, and tens of thousands from China and Russia. Murderers, rapists, gang members, other violent convicted criminals were entering our country, are here now. She knew that billions of taxpayer dollars, your money, were being spent on food, housing, health care, education, child care for illegal immigrants. But this is what Kamala supports. In fact, she chose a running mate, Tim Walz, who advocated for taxpayer-funded college tuition for Harris-Biden illegals and legal driver's licenses as well. Kamala herself supporting taxpayer-funded sex change operations for convicts and for her illegal immigrants. It's crazy. I know. It almost sounds like impossible to believe, but it's true. That is who you might be voting for tomorrow. Now America's border crisis is par for the course. For years, Kamala advocated for open borders where illegal immigration is decriminalized, so it's mission accomplished for Biden's border czar. Take a look.
You support giving universal health care, Medicare for all, to people who are in this country illegally?
Let me just be very clear about this. I am opposed to any policy that would deny in our country any human being from access to public safety, public education, or public health, period.
If someone crosses over the border, it's illegally, it is illegal, and you would decriminalize it.
I would not make it a crime punishable by jail. It should be a civil enforcement issue, but not a criminal enforcement issue.
On the subject of transnational gangs, let's be perfectly clear. The president's medieval vanity project is not going to stop them.
Listen, I think there's no question that we've got to critically re-examine ICE and its role and the way that it is being administered and the work it is doing, and we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
That is the real Kamala Harris. That is the Kamala Harris that has been protected her entire campaign by the state-run media mob. Not only does she want to decriminalize the illegal immigration, she also seems to have a very soft spot in her heart for violent criminals and rioters. You might recall, the media didn't remind you during this election year, the summer of 2020, 574 riots, 4 days after a police precinct was burned to the ground in Minneapolis. She promoted a Minnesota bail fund, raising money to get violent offenders back on the streets. And again, 4 days after a police precinct burned to the ground. And then she went on CBS, Colbert, and said, those rioters, they're not going to stop, and they shouldn't stop. And I'm not going to stop supporting them, in case you forgot.
This is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not.
Is Liz Cheney watching? Beware, take note. They're not going to stop and shouldn't stop. So Kamala seemingly wants to decriminalize left-wing violent riots, illegal immigration. But if you are a law-abiding American, don't you dare utter the words illegal alien or radical Islamic terrorism. You need to be courageous, according to Kamala. Take a look.
You must have the courage to object when they use that term, radical Islamic terrorism, which ignores how Muslims have overwhelmingly been the greatest victims of terror. And we must also have the courage to reject that term, illegal alien. I have seen some of the worst of criminal behavior. I have seen the worst of crime. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
In contrast, no one values freedom of speech more than Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris doesn't just want to censor your speech. She wants to ban a lot of things like private health insurance. She said it in her own words. Take a look.
You support the Medicare for All bill, I think initially co-sponsored by Senator Bernie Sanders. You're also a co-sponsor on it. I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance. So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it?
Well, listen, the idea is that everyone gets access to medical care. And you don't have to go through the process of going through an insurance company, having them give you approval, going through the paperwork, all of the delay that may require. Who of us has not had that situation where you got to wait for approval and the doctor says, well, I don't know if your insurance company is going to cover this? Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
Government-run health care, even for illegal immigrants, and no private health insurance. She also wants to get rid of the Second Amendment in spite of claims to the contrary and disarm law-abiding American citizens. Her mandatory gun buyback program, I'd call that gun confiscation. You decide.
Assault weapons that are already in circulation. What do you do about those?
Well, there are approximately 5 million, to your point, Craig. We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
How mandatory is your gun buyback program?
It's mandatory.
Second Amendment?
The Second Amendment, listen, we're going to have to do it the right way. There's no question about that. But we don't have any, we have to get these guns off the street. Just because you legally possess a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean that we're not going to walk into that home and check to see if you're being responsible and safe in the way you conduct your affairs.
Donald Trump, he will protect your First Amendment rights, your Second Amendment rights. He will limit government's power. That is your choice tomorrow. While Kamala will be coming for your guns, based on Kamala's own words, she wants to turn America into Venezuela. But with less oil and gas production, that is the worst-case scenario. It will lead to massive shortages. It will increase the cost of everything you buy in every store you go to, even way beyond the current inflation we are experiencing. That would be economic ruin, a loss of freedom, and frankly, America will become unrecognizable, in my view. Not a great scenario. The best case scenario is that she is a continuation of the Biden White House, which was the single worst administration in modern American history. The inflation will continue. Prices will not come down. Government spending will only go up. Taxes will go up. Regulations will go up. Crime will rise. Chaos will continue around the globe. And remember, according to Kamala's own words, she played a vital role in all of the major decisions at the White House. She was the last person in the room, from Afghanistan to the border to the economy. Take a look.
President Biden always said that he wants you to be the last person in the room, particularly for big decisions, just as he was for President Obama. He just made a really big decision, Afghanistan.
Yes.
Were you the last person in the room?
Yes.
And you feel comfortable?
I do. And I'm going to add to that. This is a president who has an extraordinary amount of courage.
For the 80-plus million of you tomorrow that are going to vote, when someone is telling you who they are, believe them. Tomorrow when you head to the polls, ask yourself one simple question. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? We are truly blessed in this country. We live in the greatest country, I believe, that God ever created man. Tomorrow, the American dream is on the ballot. America as we know it is on the ballot. And in his closing argument to the American people, Donald Trump is vowing to unleash America's true potential. This is your choice tomorrow. Take a look.
But over the past 4 years, Americans have suffered one catastrophic failure, betrayal, and humiliation after another. Kamala Harris has delivered soaring prices and economic anguish at home, war and chaos abroad, and nation-destroying invasion on our southern border like nobody's ever seen before. With your vote tomorrow, we can fix every single problem our country faces and lead America, and indeed the whole world, to new heights of glory. Vote for me and I will deliver rising wages, soaring income, and a colossal surge of jobs, wealth, and opportunity for Americans of every race, religion, color, and creed, every one of them. As your president, I will fight for you every single day with every breath in my body. I will fight.
This is the greatest choice election in our lifetime, and the choice couldn't be more distinct. It couldn't be any more clear. Under Donald Trump, child poverty was at a multi-decade low. Income levels for all Americans reached record highs, including for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workplace, African American youth unemployment. Inflation was non-existent. Interest rates were at record low. The border was secure. Gas prices were low. The world was a more peaceful place. This is what Donald Trump did his first term, and this is what he plans to do to make America great again. So you can turn off the noise and the smears, being called a Nazi, being called a racist, being called a fascist, being called garbage, and there's only one option. I'm only one host. I have this camera, which you give me every night. I'm very grateful for it. But this choice is your choice. It's up to the American people. The choice could not be any more clear. 80 million or more of you will vote tomorrow. I hope for the sake of our children and grandchildren that you will go to the polls and that we will make a choice for America's future. We stand on the shoulders of the greatest generation, and our lives are built upon their sacrifice. Every generation likes to leave this country in better shape than they found it. I think that's on the ballot tomorrow. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.